There. Huzzah! Hi everyone. Give me a shout in the chat when I am live. Let me know if the audio volume for me chatting is okay, and then we'll get started. Today has been a day. I've been writing some of this. We'll get to the book in a second. I've been writing some of my book today. I've been feeling better about it today. I've been writing longer sections than I normally do in one go. Okay, apparently things are looking good. I'm live. This is good. So, hello everyone. Laura K. Buzz here, and yeah, I'm doing a Q&A because I'm making a book. I'm making a couple of books actually, but we're going to talk about one of them in particular. So, yeah, my name is Laura Kate Dale. And I have 2 books in the works with different publishers. I'm just going to give a bit of an overview before we jump in. I have a memoir which is written already. I'm trying to get audiobook rights done, basically about being LGBT and on the autism spectrum and how the two interacted growing up and how they interact now. That's coming out in July next year. That's all like sorted. Pre-orders will be up like early 2019. Today, however, we're talking about a different book. We are talking about Things I Learned from Mario's Butt, which hopefully I will be publishing through Unbound, assuming that we've got the numbers there. Unbound is a crowdfunding platform where basically I've created the bulk of a book and this publisher's gone, yep, we are convinced, we are confident you can make this book. It looks good. We will do the publisher things to help you. Then we put it up and go, hey, if you're interested, buy some copies. If enough people buy them, we do a print run. It goes out to shops. We like make this a proper book. So my book's been up on Unbound for about 4 days and is about a third of the way to being funded already, which is really nice. But yeah, I'm just gonna have a look in the chat. So Ranakel, you're only in 1080-60, which kills my little village internet and spits on its corpse, but you're live. Sorry about that. I will have a VOD up for people with poorer internet where you'll be able to watch this later, not in 1080-60. Is it too early to ask questions? Thalia Ra, I apologise if I mispronounced your name, asks, what spawned the idea for the book? So there's a bit of a story to this, and I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I've ever really told this story properly before. So about 4 years ago, I was starting out on Patreon as a self-funded creator, and I was basically just trying to make about £500 a month, which would be enough to cover my share of the rent and bills on like a 1-room place after I just moved out of my parents' home for the first time. And we were, like, pretty close to that target, and one of the things I did is I went on Twitter and was like, hey, what would you, like, pay money to see me do? Like, what is a thing in video games where, like, if I did it, you'd go, yeah, I'll pay you for that. And someone, I do not remember who, one of these days I need to track down which Twitter account did this, tweeted me and just went, if you reviewed video game character butts, I'd pay you for that. Something like that. And I retweeted it as a joke, honestly. I was like, isn't that silly? And then, like, a bunch of people were like, yeah, we'll pay you money if you do that. And I was like, oh, okay. So I started a podcast called Laura's Gaming Butts, and it did really well. It was a really fun thing, and the more I did it, the more I realised, like, there was actually some fun, serious, silly overlap there. Is sometime about 4 years ago. I must have been doing this podcast for a couple of months, and I ended up actually putting a post on Facebook being like, what's the legality of using images of video game characters in like a physical book? Because I kind of want to make a book out of this. And nothing really happened out of it for a while. I did the podcast. I did the podcast on Destructoid for a while. That podcast kind of just existed, and the thing that made me make this book in the end was after I found a publisher and got my memoir sort of through a publisher, and I was like, oh, I actually have it in me to write a book's worth of words. And to get it published, and that's like, there are publishers who will say, yeah, there is value in what you've created. That gave me the confidence to go, this silly idea's been on the back burner. I want to do something silly because, honestly, a memoir is really fucking intense emotional labour to write a memoir, and I just wanted to write something bit more lighthearted, a bit sillier, so I gave it a go, and people really bought into the idea. People seemed really into this this book idea. What else have we got in the way of questions? Hello to everyone who's in the chat. Okay, Shotgun Choda asks, okay, why specifically Mario's butt? I'm gonna be honest, Mario's butt is not the most interesting butt narratively in video games. If I were gonna name this book after the most interesting butt in video games, it would probably be something like Things I Learned from Skull Kid's Butt, or possibly things I don't know. There's a few butts that I would say are more interesting than Mario's, but Mario is the character that everyone knows. Everyone knows about Mario. No one thinks about his butt. Like, Skull Kid, you might have thought about his butt because his butt was narratively interesting. Mario is like a character everyone knows and no one thinks about the butt for, which made it just like, I've got to go with the character everyone knows on the cover, even if they weren't. They actually came along quite late in the writing process. A lot of the early butts I wrote about were much more down the rabbit hole, I guess. Thank you for the question. Let's have a look. What else have we got? It's amazing how some butts, like other topics, become way more interesting when you start digging. Yep. Right. Tricky Builder. Has anybody actually ever drawn you as the Khaleesi of butts? I tried to imagine you rising from the ashes, 3 tiny baby dragon butts clinging onto you. I did have Khaleesi of butts in my Twitter bio for a while. Many people over the years have drawn me on a throne of butts. It's quite a beautiful thing. I don't have the fan art to hand, but if you, like, tweet me sometime, I have a lot of fan art of just, like, me and butts, and it's great. I fucking love it. I don't know how butts became a part of my personal brand, and I'm glad that I get to, like, make a big tangible thing out of that this soon. So what else do we have in the questions? The Mudkip dude, how do you avoid copyright problems with the book? Okay, so there's a few things here. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm paraphrasing a lot of this, but basically, we have to not use actual in-game assets. It has to be original art that is recognizable as the character, but is clearly not like you have traced a piece of official art. It has to be a very clearly unique representation of the character. The text is fine, because the text is covered by sort of criticism, fair use, review, critique, all these sort of things. The text is fine because it's fair use, because it's reviews and criticism. We just have to make sure that the art is unique enough that we can't be accused of having copied anything official, but recognisable still, and that's the line we have to walk with our artist. Zach Flavin is the artist on the book, and honestly, he's done a superb job so far. I'm really happy that, like, a big priority for me, and a big part of the reason that I'm crowdfunding, you might have just heard a Skype ping, if so, apologies. One of the big things that I wanted to prioritise and why I wanted to crowdfund this is I wanted to make sure I was paying Zach, my artist, like a proper, decent artist wage. I want to make sure I was paying him properly for his work, and I'm really happy I've been able to pay, like, a good amount for the great work he's done. So, yeah, hope that answers your question. Let's see, what else have we got? Mario's nipple is more interesting than his butt, honestly, apparently. I beg to differ. I think his nipples are, like, you know, caught off guard because you don't expect to see them, but his butt does have interesting things to say about it. I don't want to spoil too much, but his is a butt of complacency. I'll say that much about what I have to say in the book. 9Joe07. Will all the character names in the book be revealed before release? So, I've got a meeting with Unbound on Wednesday to discuss, like, things we can do to help get book sales to keep momentum and to hit that 100% mark. And one of the things I'm going to suggest to Unbound is maybe when we hit 50% funded, I give a full list, possibly. I don't know. If you've got any questions, I have the full list on my computer there. I can tell you about some of the butts that are going to be in there. I can answer yes or no questions of, like, is this series represented? I can tell you that I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I think there's a pretty good, like, 50-50 split of male and female butts. Like, I've tried to get that split pretty good. Let's see. Nintendo can throw a hissy fit over anyone who uses their brand images. You're right. If there's anyone who's gonna complain, it's gonna be Nintendo. Apologies if you're hearing these Skype pings. I forgot to get that muted, and suddenly a conversation started. Yeah, Mario are the company that, like, I think if anyone's gonna get hissy, it's them. I didn't want to crowdfund this through Kickstarter. I wanted to go through Unbound because they have experience with this kind of thing. They've done books that have dealt with video game assets before. They have their legal team. They're like, yeah, we will handle all the stuff that happens. If any publishers get grumbly, you know, they can go through us, not you. I trust their ability to, like, they've told me just, right, make the book you want to make. We'll deal with the legal side. So we should be fine. We'll see. That'll all be fun. What else do we have? Do you think Spider-Man's butt says something about him? Yes, I have a section in the book about Spider-Man's butt. The simple version is, if that butt was too memorable, everyone would know who Spider-Man was. So that's a thing that's important about Spider-Man's butt, is secret identity means you can't have a memorable butt. It can be a good butt, but it can't be distinct in how it's good. It has to be like any other very good butt. I'll say that. So, what else have we got? Tamuki wants to ask, how did you choose the guest writers for the book? Honestly, it was a combo of a couple of things. I've, over the past few years, built a bit of a catalogue of people that I've worked with in the games industry who I think like my work enough, and we've been on good enough terms with that I can go to them and say, hey, I've been on your project. Is there any chance you contribute to mine? A big factor was obviously how appropriate is the tone of the kind of content these people make. How does that gel with a book about gaming butts? Good example, Justin McElroy. He's a podcaster. He does very, very silly content. I've been on his podcast before. I guested on an episode of Sawbones, and that was the thing that, like, I did for him. And I was like, hey, can you maybe return the favour, do a thing for my book? So that's kind of what it is have I already worked with the person? Do I get on well with them? Does their content sort of mesh with what I'm going for? I sort of pulled from people who I've either podcasted with before or who were on Laura's Gaming Butts. There's a few people who are on Laura's Gaming Butts that I still need to reach out to and see if they'll do guest content for. Let's have a look. Will we see butts from Dante from Devil May Cry or any of the Final Fantasy characters? I've got some Final Fantasy butts. I don't currently have Devil May Cry butts. We've not locked down who's doing what with the guest reviews. I know one of the guest critics is interested in doing a Devil May Cry butt. Honestly, I think we're keeping it to like a little over 100 butts, and there's a lot of series I would like to represent, and not everyone is going to get represented. But I think Devil May Cry might end up squeezing in there through a guest review. Will you talk about the butts from Paladins at some point? I have relatively minimal experience with the lore of Paladins. Paladin seems like it has way too many characters for me to dive into it and learn enough of the lore to write interesting stuff about the butts without any existing knowledge. There's a few things like that where if I don't already know a series terribly familiarly, and it's got a lot of characters, it can be very difficult to go, I'm going to soak in enough of the lore to expertly talk about butts, because Wikipedia pages for characters for Paladins won't tell you, like, here's why their butts are interesting. You gotta really soak a series in to learn that stuff. Can you name a butt from the first 3 or so games you ever played? First game I ever remember playing was Mario Paint, so I guess Mario's butt from that. I remember playing Ocarina of Time very early on, so Link's butt, which is in the book. And Tetris was the first handheld game I played, I think, and we are reviewing a Tetris Pieces buttocks. That's an interesting thing to do. So there you go, there's 3 butts from very early games I played. how much of the guest contributions are already written? Was it awkward to approach people with, hey, want to write for my butt book? And that's from Shotgun Choda. Right now, none of them are finished, none of the guest contributions. All of the guest contributors are like, yep, we're happy to do a thing. We'll lock down what butt we're doing closer to the time. We'll get them back to you. I think they're getting them back to me in the next couple of months. But I know there's a few people who are close to being done and who have got that ball rolling. There are some people I have to chase up a bit more. The guest contributors are all locked in. They're just like, they're an external thing. They're something I have to chase up and that I will probably chase up once we've hit 100%. Who's the strangest guest writer you managed to persuade to write something for the book? Okay. I'll say this much. This guest writer is not 100% confirmed yet, but if you look at the developers who are connected to this book, who are guesting for this book, and look at the projects they're working on, one of them is working on a project that you would look at and go, yeah, that's a very butt-centric project. And there's a person connected to that project that you'd go, oh, they're a big butt-related person, and I'm trying to get them involved. They don't do much PR stuff and press stuff, but I'm hoping I can get them. So that's the tease I'll give you. Right. Looking at the questions. Tricky Builder wants to ask, could you see a Pixel Squirt book happening? So Pixel Squirt is a podcast I've done with Geek Remix, and we basically go and find terrible video game porn and review it. It might be a bit more difficult because, like, descriptive reviews of pornography are a difficult thing to get, like, published and to get an ISBN number attached to. It's a thing I might discuss if this book goes well, but, like, that's a future thing. That's going to be a very complicated one to get off the ground, honestly. Will there be an honourable mention of video game butts which didn't quite make it to the butt book? Agitated Nurse. Here's the thing. If a butt is interesting enough that I want to give it an honourable mention, I might just see if I can find some extra pages to squeeze it in the book. Like, this is the joy of this being my project, is that there's very little to stop me reviewing a butt if I really want to review it. Right, let's have a look. Kiozat, I hope I pronounced that right, asks, considering such a huge leap in emotional dissonance between them, how did your experience from your memoir help you with this new book? Yeah, writing a memoir. I wrote my memoir in about 4 months or so. I think I was given a year to write it, and I cranked it out in 4 months. And writing a memoir is emotionally tough. It was a lot of digging up upsetting stuff from my past, a lot of re-examining things I've not really thought of in a very long time. It was draining. There were a lot of writing sessions where I just, like, got a few hundred words done and just kind of wanted to cry because, you know, life is a whole thing when you think back on it. But, yeah, honestly, the memoir to write was a lot of very lengthy sections about myself, and it was very easy to write because it was just writing about me. I know myself. I know myself better than any other topic. I could just sort of write and write and write, and it happened. The butt book has been a lot of far shorter chunks of writing. I have to come up with interesting ideas on a much more, like, short-term basis. I have to go, okay, here's 300 words. Okay, new character. What's interesting about them? How do I flesh that out? It's a lot of small sections. I like that I can sort of just jump in, silly idea, which one do I fancy, get that written, out. I don't have to do 5,000, 10,000 words to feel like I've written something substantial. I could write 1,000 words, get 4 or 5 characters maybe, like, written and out, and go like, oh, yeah, there we go. I achieved something today. It's also really nice to work with an artist because it's meant that I've had someone to bounce ideas off, to talk things over with. writing my memoir was really insular. It was a lot of just delving into myself, and it's nice to work on a project where I'm working with other people. I don't have to burden it all myself. I can see if things work by bouncing them off someone else. Someone's going to see stuff before it's finished. If I have ideas, I can go, does this work or not? It's been nice to have a much more light-hearted creation process. What other questions do we have? Val the Knight asks a question about the artist that did the posing for Overwatch. That's not who I'm alluding to, but I am trying my very best to find out. I want to contact someone from the Overwatch art team about their stuff. I want to do an interview with them. I think I've got a lead. I just need to chase it up. So, Jack GTX asks, will robot butts also be included? Yes, they will. Literally just before starting this stream, I wrote about a butt of a robot from an indie game that recently got re-released on a handheld. That has a kind of sexy robot. I'm trying to be relatively coy. As an actual question, let's have a look. Val the Knight, as an actual question, given the amount of butts on display nowadays, how many categories of games or styles of games were excluded from the catalogue? My approach with this book has been, I don't want to talk about the obvious butts. Like, if you think about games that have very visible butts in them, my brain would go to something like a Dead or Alive. If you're just being totally honest, if you just want to review a butt that you can see and go, there's an attractive butt, here's my thoughts on this attractive butt, that's easy. And there's very little to say about them beyond, it's an attractive butt, it's squishy, maybe it's jiggly, whatever. I very deliberately tried to exclude games where the butts were just too easy. There was no challenge. I want to write about butts that people don't think about as interesting butts. Like, those are the butts I want to talk about. I want to talk about great example that, like, is publicly known already. I review Miranda from... not Miranda. I review Ellie from Borderlands 2's butt. Like, that's a butt that a lot of people don't really pay attention to. It's like, no, flower on that butt draws the eye. It's body positivity. She is comfortable with her size. That's a story of a butt that people don't think about because it's not a traditionally, it's not a Dead or Alive butt, I'll say that. So that's the kind of categories of butt I was, trying to not associate with, is butts that felt too easy to talk about. Yeah, let's have a look. I think there's a few more questions have come in. Do modern HD butts leave less to the imagination than older pixelated butts? That's from Tricky Builder. In some ways. Here's the thing. If you're dealing with a butt that has only ever been represented in pixel art, there's a lot more room for me to take creative liberties with how I talk about that butt. In an HD era, you can't fudge the numbers so much with how you talk about the butt. If you're talking about a pixel butt, you can fill in a lot of blanks and create interesting narrative out of context, where no canon realistic design of the butt exists. I think that's a fair way to put it. Let's have a look. Becky Toothill, what can we learn from your butt? You can learn from my butt that I sit around on my ass all day and don't take terribly good care of what I eat because my butt is getting big. Let's see. Steve, Matt Q, I wonder how long it will be before it's funded 100%. Is there a deadline a la Kickstarter? So there's no firm deadline with Unbound. Generally speaking, Unbound will keep a project up for about 4 months, and the idea is just, if it got to 4 months and we were 95% funded, they wouldn't go, nope, 4 months are up, you lost your chance. They have some flexibility. Honestly, if I had to make a guess, having seen the behind-the-scenes graphs and stuff, I'm hoping this book gets funded around the start of November. Like, I think give it until, like, the end of this month, start of next month payday for people who have wanted to back the book and haven't had a chance to be able to do so. I think we'll probably get funded within a month. That's no guarantee. We'll see how it goes, but we're about a third of the way there already in 4 days, which, fantastic start. Thank you so much to everyone who has supported this, either by getting a copy or by tweeting about it or just tuning into this live stream and watching this video. I could not have hoped for this good of a launch. So I've seen the numbers. I know how expensive it is to, like, fund the artist and get a book up to production run level. We're doing really well. Let's have a look. Jiminy Gillicers asks in the chat, are all the butts included exquisite, or are there some scathing bottom critiques in there as well? So they're not all positive. Not all of the butt reviews are positive. If I'm going to be scathing, I want a reason to be scathing. I want the character to be justified, for it to not feel mean. Like, I'm not going to take a character who is a nice, sweet person, but has, like, a terrible bum and just go, yeah, oh, their bum's really shitty, innit? Because that just comes off really body-shamey. Like, if I'm gonna complain about someone's butt, like, let's say there is a character who is really, really dismissive of... Actually, here's an example from today. There is a character I wrote about today who actively and canonically in-game thinks that butts are not family-friendly, and I don't feel bad being scathing about their butt, because I'm like, you know, if you're going to be critical of butts, I'm going to be critical of your butt. And that's the thing. I don't want to be body-shamey. I want to be critical of butts where it feels justified. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. More questions. Nuja, I hope I pronounced that right. Are you disappointed that Snake's butt was nerfed for Smash Bros. Ultimate? Oh my god, yes. This is a big point of contention. Smash Bros. Melee and Brawl, particularly Brawl. Brawl was amazing for its butt design and for how easy it was to see those butts. Like, the camera viewer, that was my default way to get, like, good reference images of some of these characters' butts. The fact that Snake's butt has been nerfed in Smash Ultimate is a travesty, and I will never forgive it. Like, people complain about no Waluigi in Smash. Where's Snake's ass in Smash? That's what I want to know. What do you think the general public will assume about you from seeing your two books side by side in a store? It paints an interesting picture of me that it's like, here's a serious, heartwarming memoir about living with these difficult things. Here's a book about boss, they're funny and smart. It shows the two very different poles of my personality, and I think anyone who sees both those books side by side will hopefully go, okay, I fully understand this weird person now. X Feel My Puddle wants to ask, were there any issues with publishers not wanting their butts included? Honestly, we've not reached out to a lot of publishers. The deal is, Unbound are pretty confident from their past book work that they're like, hey, you're legally safe to do this. If anyone gets funny about it, like, we'll worry about that when it comes and we'll deal with it then, but you're in the legal clear, you're fine. So if they're not happy with it, there's not much they can do. At least that's how I understand it. Again, I'm not a legal person. I am putting a lot of faith in a publisher that, like, has done this kind of thing before. Let's have a look.